We'll get started. All right. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the SAME Industry Government event. Jason, I'm going to turn it over to you for opening remarks.
Sure. So I think most people in the room know who I am, but for the benefit of people online, my name is Jason Manning. I'm the Chief of Technical Services branch with Engineering Division of Europe. So I appreciate everybody coming together to collaborate and improve our proposal template. A little background, I'm not sure how aware everybody is with kind of our processes, but we were using your proposal templates as our IT templates for the last, 15, 20 years. So that means our AEDMs had to go through all of your proposals and get updated and figure out how it all worked every single time they wanted to do an IGE or a mod. Obviously, that was very inefficient and time consuming and labor intensive for them. So it's been a goal of mine and the AEDM section to come up with a standard proposal that we would use as an IGE, and then our AE partners would use as your proposal. And that also makes it much easier for us to analyze because we're analyzing apples to apples instead of something a little bit different. So Kurt has been our lead on it. I think he's come up with a great start. We've been improving this document over the last 3 months based on feedback we've gotten from our AE partners. Obviously, the majority of these RFPs went out at the end of the year with the new template as a requirement, which has generated a lot of comments, which is why we're here today. So me and my team, we're looking forward to collaborating with you and coming up with solutions to improve what we've started on. Thank you for attending and looking forward to the good conversation.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jason. And I just wanted to read quickly from the SAME mission. We are here to lead collaboration in support of national security objectives. The vision is to act as an integrator. SAME is to act as an integrator across the AEC community at home and abroad. And while this mission may originate in the United States, it transcends borders and institutions, because a safe Europe is a safe America, and a safe America is a safe Europe. So I just want to say thank you very much again for the Corps of Engineers for being here to collaborate so that we together as a community can deliver national security objectives. That is the exact reason that SAME exists. And so I want to say again, thank you to the Corps and to our AEC industry partners for coming together in a genuine collaborative environment. Before we get started into the actual presentation, I just want to go over the ground rules here. Again, the purpose for this is active discussion and collaboration. And I'd just like to ask that the people who have actually worked on the spreadsheet are the ones to collaborate, because that's, again, the purpose that we're here. For those who have seen the worksheet but haven't actively used it, put your questions in. We'll make sure we get those back to the Corps of Engineers and continue that collaboration. Adam, could I ask a favor from you? Would you go to that link and open up the team site and just monitor the comments to see if there's any comments from the AEC community online? Thank you. MS Teams chat. So I've asked Adam to open up that window, Adam Boobity. So he will monitor that. So if you have any questions, please just throw them in there. We do have a strict end time at 12:55, so I'm going to be pretty hard on making sure that we're staying on topic for a couple of reasons. One, these things can easily turn into a gripe session, and that's not helpful to anybody. And so I'll be pretty intentional about trying to make sure that we're staying collaborative, respectve, and helpful to this effort. During the open Q&A process, I put a bunch of 3x5 or whatever size cards those are on the table. Please just write your questions down while Chandler is going through his proposal, and even right now. And I will look at those, adjudicate them, and make sure that we're getting through the most important stuff first. If we don't get through all the questions, I will make sure again to collaborate those with the Corps of Engineers, send out all of those appropriate notes to the AEC community. Again, please keep in mind that this is a collaborative effort, and I will follow up with any questions or additional concerns from the AEC community and from the Corps of Engineers. All right, at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Chandler Ogden to go through the survey results Oh, good. All right, so I'm gonna turn it over to Chan to go through the survey results. So this is the survey that he sent out to the AEC community to get input for what has happened. And actually, before I do that, I did want to say that Jason and his team have sent out a revised version of the spreadsheet. I don't know if everybody's seen it, so there have been a number of improvements that they've already went through. Chandler's going to talk about those as well. All right, Chandler, over to you.
Yeah, and you stole my thunder. I will say that the most recent version of the unlock template that Kurt shared was great. I think we've addressed a lot of the things, but there's still a couple things. My goal of what I tried to do here, I'll go ahead and share my screen just to talk through.
Oh, perfect. Do I need to?
Nope, I think you should be good. So that shares. We need to take yours down, I think. Go back to your team slide.
Oops. Working on it.
In the slideshow.
Over here and this slideshow.
Yeah.
I'm working on ending it.
There we go.
Okay, you good now?
So hopefully everybody can see that. So I just sent a pretty simple survey out just to gather information. Try to get this where you can see it a little bit better. There we go. Oh, no, that's not the one. So I color coded the bars. The bars basically are, the blue is, don't need, don't care, low priority. Red is marginally useful, orange is neutral, green is very helpful, useful, and purple is essential. Just with the number of comments that we had, you can't really read it, so I added kind of a key at the bottom and just put little color blocks next to the ones that were the highest ranked. And again, a lot of these, as we go through the spreadsheet, have kind of already been addressed. Ease of use was very, very important. Flexibility to add and expand to match scope. Ability to account for multiple rate cards was important. Fee totals by discipline, phase, and partner. Checksums to validate accuracy. And then finally, the summary tab was another thing that the AE community found would be very helpful. I also highlighted a couple of the ones that were very useful or helpful, which again, I just picked kind of the ones that were the highest scored. A summary tab covering base and option pricing. And then also checksums to allow parametric checking, percent design, percent non-design, split by partners and subs, travel costs and permitting fees, clear presentation of travel buildup, clear presentation of ODCs and other buildup, and then consolidated list of assumptions and bid qualification. So those were kind of the key tasks that were there as far as the areas that were highlighted in the survey responses. I've kind of boiled that down to a couple key items. We'll kind of roll through these and then we'll maybe go through the pages of the survey. Again, a lot of these things I think we'll find have kind of already been integrated. Maybe there's some suggestions that as we start to talk about it, there might be ways we can enhance a little bit more, or it may not even be needed. So desired features, and again, these were kind of the write-in sections of the survey. The bars that I showed at the first were just a low to high scoring thing, just to kind of show where the focus is. So desired features, pre-filled project specific data to reduce manual entry and errors. That's kind of already there. When we get to the spreadsheet, there's a section that the core fills out. So the first, 4 or 5 tabs are core completed, and then the remaining 8, 10 tabs are AE tabs to be filled out.
And again, just maybe talking through, what to expect, and maybe some of this is workflow. And I did see this actually as one of the comments in the instructions of the spreadsheet is, to talk through the WBS at the pre-bid or at the scope clarifying meeting. That's 100%. That was on our list as well as being very important. Getting alignment to make sure that everybody agrees makes it easier to match it up. Yeah.
We know what we're doing.
Apples to apples, right? Seamless subcontractor pricing integration. That's one of the ones that we should talk through in more detail. There's some subs that are teaming subs that have negotiated rates. There's other ones that are going to be lump sum subcontracts for services like geotech or topo survey, where those will typically be done. And we did have a comment where we need to account for some possibly 2 levels of profit on that. Because typically, if we have a lump sum bid from a service provider like a topo company, they're going to have pricing built in. We typically don't charge profit on profit. So being able to have a different profit there is something that would be helpful.
So you would just be applying profit to the price that was for the work, and then the profit would be.
Right. And that's often not the same profit that we charge on labor.
Sure.
So maybe it is, maybe it didn't, but having the flexibility would be one that we would think would be good to have. Sheet counts by discipline was one that was raised. I had a comment to add a summary tab. And typically, as an A, we use the summary tab for kind of parametric checks. So, typically I don't know that I would personally look to have a lot of detail on the number of sheets and have that as a discussion point, but I would have it just as a check for myself, maybe on that back sheet to be able to go, hey, is this about the right number of sheets? And that maybe informs reproduction costs and some of that sort of stuff too. But again, we can talk that. To me, having a summary sheet that allows us to put some stuff there. And, it may even be, since you're going to potentially have a different spreadsheet for different AEs, because I would guess you would want to have a version for each of the contract holders that has all of the rates already built in, and you just grab that one as the one that you go with. And that may be one where the AEs may customize that back tab or something themselves if y'all don't want to have it.
Would that be like, would there be logic tied to that sheet that's being used in the rest of the spreadsheet? Or would it just be a place to like put notes and assumptions?
We do that when we do our bids. We basically we have to, basically show how it maps out to the JV partners. I need to basically transfer that to a pricing template that I use to get things approved within my company that have hours by role, where I basically have to take the data that we put into your spreadsheet, put it into a different spreadsheet. So if I could have that basically in summary form, that makes it an easy task. You always have to have one as a primary and one as kind of a mandrolic move of data. It's kind of hard to tie those together.
Yeah.
But at least having it where you get all the information there and you look at one spot, it makes it a much more painless job.
So like, I'm trying to envision what we're talking. So it's a roll up of like just information that you need to provide to different.
Yeah. So I'll show an example when we look at the spreadsheet, because if you look at the labor, the example we have has multiple, rate cards. That's a really long sheet, and it's hard where if we distribute it amongst the different teaming partners to build all the people that are going to contribute, it's really hard to kind of get a visible view of that both vertically and horizontally, because that could be a pretty wide spreadsheet. So having a subtotal off to the far right would be a pretty easy thing to do. And then again, kind of porting that to a summary tab that just rolls it up by phase would be.
I remember, I know what you're talking.
Yeah. And then, so some of the stuff with minor settings, freeze the top row and column, makes it easier for some of the larger tables. Clear user-friendly instructions. Again, I think that's a great start. Have a couple comments we can go through on there. Cross-platform Excel capability. That's one that, one of the suggestions that I had made was around having macro to get rid of all the non-used rows or columns, just to make it a more consolidated thing. I know in hindsight that that's potentially a problem for some companies whose IT systems don't allow you to email a spreadsheet that has macros. So that's probably maybe not the best execution for that.
I would assume it should have everything.
Yeah. So I know right now there's buttons to, compress and contract. And maybe that's just an action on the A that goes, hey, pick the ones that aren't used and hide them manually at the end of the proposal. Enhanced cost breakdown options, split subcontractor profit, apply G&A more intuitively. And that's actually a question. I don't know that the math was working right on the spreadsheet that I saw, but we can look through that. That's on the fully loaded rates or direct cost with overhead. Variable designated overhead rates, exchange rate support, that's in the spreadsheet already. Pricing by scope and phase, again, that's with the WBS, so that's pretty well handled, I think. AE reference tagging in the scope of work, I do not understand where that comment came from. So if anybody online knows what that was referenced, feel free to speak up.
I can speak about that one. So regarding if in the spreadsheet there are columns or rows for scope, it's helpful if we are able to, if not already done, reference back to the statement of work where it is. And it may be in more than one location. So for instance, permitting might be on page 5, might be on page 15, might be on page 25. They all don't say the same thing, but you can reference all 3 of them. And then if, for instance, if scope, or if it's determined during negotiation that permitting not required, then it's a quick reference to state, okay, then it needs to be removed from the RFP in these locations.
Okay, well, we can talk about that. I think hopefully having the alignment on the WBS will help that anyway, right? Because if you talk to and everybody agrees to WBS, that potentially identifies any mismatches, but good comment. Assumptions, clarifications and qualification section for the scope context. That's already there. We can talk about, one of the things that, we as a company do, we typically have that in all of our proposals, and we'll take sections of the spreadsheet and put it into the PDF. So you have a PDF that has a price, has the backup, has all of the assumptions, everything in a single document. My only question to the core might be, if we put that in a spreadsheet, does that get included into the award? Because I know, I guess I just question if has the risk of being lost or being harder to go back and find.
As in the past.
Yeah.
Where assumption of exclusion, even you put it in the cover letter, you put it in the spreadsheets, that doesn't always find it in the contract.
Right.
So it'd be a great, if you're gonna use proposal template with these assumptions, if that could be like an attachment to the contract, so it's there.
Do they attach your PDF
No,
to the contract?
no,
Yeah,
that's
so either way, it's probably not going to be attached, but we honor what you put in as your assumptions in either your accepted proposal or that PDF, because that's what we awarded the contract under. So that's why it's imperative for our team to make sure none of those assumptions, to make sure we agree with all those assumptions, or we get rid of them somehow, scope clarification or whatever.
And that may be something, if you find while you're reviewing the spreadsheet, having those in the same document makes it easier for you to do that review. That makes logical sense, where I would go, okay, I'll default and put it in the spreadsheet, maybe not regurgitate it.
One way that this was handled in the past, by contracting officers pre-award, was they would add a single sentence on page 2 of the award that says, this award includes the fee proposal that was submitted on a specific date.
Our contracting's not going to do that.
Okay, well, they did it for 10 years, but I don't know what they do now.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously.
The scope of work is attached to the contract, so either you modify the scope of work or you make it an attachment, because you have like 13 attachments. We've had one task order where we had our list of assumptions and exclusions. They put it as another attachment in the proposal and the scope of work, so it was documented in the contract.
Yeah, so the problem we have is every contracting officer is different and they don't standardize all of their processes. So some of them may do that and some of them may not. And we can't obviously control that as an engineering. So yeah, it's a great idea and it would make it very easy, but I'm not sure all of them are going to do it, to be honest. But we can bring that up because we're going to do some type of meeting with them to go over processes.
Yeah.
We can talk to them about putting either a reference like you were suggesting on the in their award documents or attaching the fee proposal or PDF as an attachment to the scope. So we'll bring up both those options and see if they're open to either.
Planning validation by scope and phase for delayed projects. I think that's more of a WBS related scope. I don't know who made the comment if they want to clarify.
Oh, planning validation, that was, yes, that was one, in the event that there's a long pause between the planning phase and the award for design. There are at times changes that occur. One obviously is inflation, but the other one that occurs is actually the sites may change. And so planning validation is double checking, going back to the planning document in a very short scope phase to double check that the information that we're bidding on, the sites that we're proposing on, et cetera, is still true and has not changed.
I think that's more of a scope comment, and we're here to talk about the template for the pricing. So,
Yes.
yeah, you definitely should try to get that included in your scope.
Yeah.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
that would be a task
Yeah.
in the scope spreadsheet if it's in your scope.
Edible formulas and links. That's one of the things that, I think a lot of the things that initially had were some of the broken formulas we're all struggling with. And I totally agree and understand with the need to lock non-changeable cells because we get ourselves into that problem occasionally with people over typing things and forgetting to look at the color. So ultimately that's a good thing. And, I think having kind of a final scrub of a version of a spreadsheet where it can be kind of tested maybe by the AE community, or at least having that initial first launch of a new revision that's issued to work through that where we're not discovering a problem when we're crunching for time would be helpful. Moving on to the next bet. So most valuable features in recent use experience. The WBS task and CLIN layout integration is great. 2-letter summary tab for consolidated overview. Wasn't really sure what that one was. And then some respondents indicated no notable features or did not apply. Least useful, and again, this is things that people were frustrated with possibly an earlier version of the spreadsheet. Lock templates, G&A costing, cost linking was unintuitive. Incorrect or unclear calculations. Again, that was, I think, an issue with the earlier versions. DBA insurance placement under profit is confusing or misleading. Lack of transparency in formulas. Front and back end tools are missing to integrate the LOE. That's, I think, that summary tab. And then rollout challenges. So that's kind of the overview of the highlights. If I share the spreadsheet itself, I figured we'd kind of go by the tabs. I've kind of highlighted a couple of things that we can talk about. Let me see if I can. Adam, if you want to toggle people and give you a little more screen maybe there, just
Sounds good.
give people that'll make your screen a little bigger.
Maybe.
Maybe. Ooh.
Why can't I?
If you hit people at the top, doesn't that make it go away at the very top? Two more. Yeah. Ooh, there, that one.
Yeah, done. Yeah.
Maybe go to view and make it where it's just what's the.
Yeah, say participants.
There we go. Yeah, the X next to the participants will do it. on the far right of the screen.
I'm sorry. What do you want me to do?
Up a little, there's an X next to it.
Ah, there it is. Yeah, that's what I thought. There we go.
All right, so this is the instruction sheet. One of the comments I was gonna make was potentially changing the color of government entered information and AE entered information. Just because I know the AEs can toggle through your spreadsheets. And again, there's some ones that are that orange where they're editable. Just seems like it made more sense for government information being one color and AE information being another. Just change the shading color. Some of the items here, and I'll kind of get to it when I come to some of the suggestions around some of the, I had a couple extra tabs I was going to suggest adding to address some of the comments that were made. Some of those may be to go back and expand some of the instructions here. And again, I know from when the survey was first sent out, we didn't have the new version, and then there's a lot of instruction here, but again, just continuing to maybe explain some of the things like profit. If we talk about having 2 tiers of profit, that would be one thing that would be good to clarify. And then also, if there's a preference on how to deal with the subs, so like subs that are fixed fee versus subs that are negotiated rate. If you have a preference from the government's perspective on how that profit should be calculated, it'd be good if we kind of put that instruction in there somewhere. Project info, this tab is, pretty straightforward. We're assuming, again, government will fill all this out. This will be pre-filled when it's given today. CLIN structure, again, looks super easy. I guess I did have a question right now, and this may just be the way you filled it out to give us the template. Having, option 1 is CLIN 2. Is there a problem having CLIN 1 and CLIN 2 as the base? Because the way the template's made with a non-design and design, you're always going to at least have 2 if it's a typical design project.
No, everything is open.
Yeah.
I mean, you could have 6 claims at base.
Yeah, cool. Yeah. I just didn't know if there's an issue from a contracting perspective. Normally CLIN 1 is the base.
So this gets into the CLIN structure is going to be probably set by the government for how the contract is going to be laid out.
Yeah.
So I think some of the tabs, like the yellow tabs, are what the government's going to fill out. And just the way the spreadsheet is set up, those yellow tabs are used on the government side of things, but they also are applied to the AE side of information too.
Yeah, and I think, and again, that's great. Assuming that you guys will have things locked, maybe by the time you send it to us, then I think that maybe de-risks anything being mistakenly tinkered with in the front end of the document by the time it comes over to us. The tasks, again, the way it uses, basically CLIN structure tasks, and then that's used to build up the WBS. That all looks super flexible, looks great. No real comments on that. And assuming this is, again, all just how the government gets the WBS and basic background put in for the AE. If I hit the AE's comments, I did have a comment, and again, this just may be an error in the spreadsheet. The list of rates that were included here is kind of a copy pastable list, didn't match the other list. I thought that was just a mistake. I'm assuming that the list of disciplines that are underneath the yellow bar or the yellow box there is if you need to add non-listed partner firms or subs to copy paste these rates into this list. Is that what that was for?
So if you see, it says can be used.
Yes.
Can use this list. So you don't have to follow that list. You can do, you can you can populate the disciplines however you want to.
Yeah,
That in column L is just something to maybe help.
Yeah.
Figure out, but I know from looking at everyone's schedule of services, for all the different disciplines, I think they've become more standardized, recently, but in the past, that certain firms had, certain, disciplines. One thing that was just caught recently was the, hygienist.
Right.
It was spelled incorrectly. That's individual services. And, that's,
Yeah.
So, I mean, the orange cells are meant to be populated by either the AEDM or by the AE community.
Yeah. yeah, it's,
So, and I mean, we can, somewhat scrub the list, but.
yeah. So again, where we have a framework contract, we have negotiated rates for like the current one that we have for Germany, Poland, Benelux, kind of bigger ones. You know, it seems like that would make sense where if you have a version of this for Stantec, Jacobs, Bugard, Horn, for example, you would have this built out with basically, here's all the rates that were in the contract. In our case, that's a lot.
Well, and it's a lot for everybody.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
that's, you know,
Such a big
multiple
area.
subs in
Yeah,
every
yeah.
single country,
So-
it would be a massive.
So if you built that one spreadsheet where all your negotiated rates are in here, that's basically, we wouldn't have to go back and edit that necessarily unless we had a specialty SME or something like that that's not listed there.
Right, but I think we also are updating this every time and we are gonna build brand new spreadsheets for however we have, 30 contracts with different. So I think we are gonna lean on you all to fill out the bottom of this.
Yeah, so I guess where I was going with that, once we have this initially built out, if you make changes to the rest of the spreadsheet, we should be able to copy paste from the full list one time. Because our rates aren't going to change, the rates are part of the contract. And having that just on that one list, even though it's a stupidly long list, once we actually with the buttons on the side to compress the list, that would be something where, we probably would never really need to edit this, really. Once it was built out, it would be referenced by the other spreadsheets that would, when we actually go to put the hours in the labor tab. So again, just seems like that would be good since the rates are fixed. You would have to make a version for each contract holder. But I would suggest if you do later versions, certainly the AEs could take the task of copying over the rates on top of it and make sure our rates are carried over forward. I get the difficulty of having everybody having their own spreadsheet makes times the number of contract holders a pain issue.
Or what you could do is you could just send out the template to each of the AE contract holders and have them populate all their rates and then send it back to you. And then you can keep that as your template.
Yeah.
And just put the onus on us to make sure that the
Yeah.
rates and all the subs are properly included.
So we would just have, like in A and B or B, I guess, that would just be a really long list of rates for you, your JV partners, and every subcontractor you have would be in this, that
Yeah,
giant.
if you look at just now, the one that was sent has 4 firms listed. So it basically repeats the list 4 times.
Okay.
So this would just be 12 times maybe, or however many we have of subs. And you would just map that to the rate card that was in the contract. And because, some of the AEs, for example, don't have, you'll have like 2 rates out of the list of 30, right?
Yeah.
And again, from an ease of mapping on the spreadsheet, it may make sense to go, yeah, I've just copied that rate table over that many times and I've only put rates in where you have them. And then kind of some of the logic with checksums of, hey, if there's no rates included, then it'll give you an error if somebody tries to put hours against somewhere where there's no rate. For example, later in the spreadsheet.
So when you build a spreadsheet now, you just go to their rate tables from an Excel format and just copy and paste over what you think they're gonna use when we do an IG.
Which firm's gonna be used, because I mean, if it's a project in Germany, you're not going to have Italian firms or Polish firms and stuff. So, yeah, you may have 12 firms, but
Yeah,
hopefully, I guess, do you see a reason why we have more than 4 firms? And then also the other thing that could be done is like in here, if you have 3 major firms that are doing a lot of the work that has almost like a full team doing the work where you need 45 disciplines, but then you have the specialty contractors that are just doing like fire protection or commissioning. You could on the fourth thing, you could just put a fire protection engineer from this firm, commissioning engineer from this firm.
yeah,
So you don't have to look at everybody too.
yeah,
I mean, part of this too is sometimes is, do you have to put the whole list of all the disciplines in if you know you're not gonna be
Yeah.
doing interior design? Why do you have an interior designer in this list? It's been standard practice to include it kind of for the ease of taking the schedule of values into the spreadsheet, but
yeah, yeah. So I would suggest, again, because the rates, if you have the rates already negotiated, having the rates already listed as one master list, again, is something that once we feel good that it's there, we wouldn't have to change. I think definitely when you get down to the labor hours tab, yeah, you want to compress that. So it's not a list of a bunch of zeros and it comes down to only that. So totally agree that the actual proposal, when you guys look at it, you're gonna, other than go, hey, did they have the right rate card in there? Which if we all agree that that's a standard list, then that is in there. When it comes to the hours, that needs to be a compressed list just for ease of review, right? So you're not having to go 500 lines long to see 30 rates smattered across the 500 lines. So
we found ourselves having more than 4 companies usually,
Yeah.
because we have a joint venture partner, so we're always 2. And then more than 2 subs in certain places. In Germany, it's not, but abroad it is. And then our rates are negotiated in euros. So in this spreadsheet, that is a disadvantage because you have to put in dollar rates and the exchange rate, which sort of adds a currency risk to us, and most of our rates are in euro.
so I can speak on that. Current version that is that I have, and I'm typically we send out these templates when we send out the task order RFP. We haven't been providing this in advance of, here's just a random version. But the latest version, let me check. Let's see, has incorporated the feature to select the currency basis of the estimate. Are you gonna provide estimate in US dollars or in euros? And then there's still features in here that you when you put in numbers, you gotta still go through and say, okay, these numbers are, the labor rates are fully burdened rate labor rates in US dollars, and then, but if the proposal is going to be done in euros, it will automatically recalculate to put those US dollar rates into euro conversion.
Okay.
Because I remember at each table, we had to do it with some of our subs, you can switch the currency from US to euro.
Correct.
So you can input it in euro, tell it it's euro, and it'll give you the updated rate based on what you put as the exchange.
Right.
I thought that was pretty good.
May I ask what exchange rate is supposed to be used? Because, for example, the host nation permit fee usually took the look-on rate, while the template sounded like more even the market rate. Is there any intention? of making something fixed?
Good question.
Because this is something we're dealing on for proposals currently, what to use, because we want to use your template.
We go to the US Treasury Department, there's a website that gives a forecast for up to the next 6 months, and depending on how long your project is, you can kind of extrapolate what that exchange rate will be for the project length. It's obviously it's a forecast, it's not.
Well, usually we try to use it, what the contract then says, because we can see.
We based on a rate, usually one a year.
Yeah.
Last year, there were 2 rates. A new one came out in like July, and we used it for the rest of the year. So it'll be paid out whenever you invoice at a rate for when the contract was cut. And that rate is determined, what is it called?
Simulcon,
Foreign currency.
fluctuation.
Yeah.
Hey, folks, we have about 15 minutes left. Sandy, would you do me a favor and just write that comment down and perfect. Then we'll follow up on that one.
Yeah.
Or I'd like to get back to Tim, make sure he stays on target.
Yeah, like, let's check with RM and see how they think we should structure these proposal templates for agencies.
So one item that we did in industry, or we do often in industry as well, we'll have one tab that includes all of our rates, all of our sums rates, everyone, over the 5 years. And so we just need to click on base year, option year 1, option year 2, and those rates go straight over to the applicant. And that's something that I think
the problem,
instead of you all having to do it.
yeah, I think what the problem is going to be is when you have mixed rates. So you have like European contractors that are using euro, but then you have some US contractors that are using dollar. Well, you're only going to get paid in one or the other, so you're going to have to convert one of them to submit. Like I don't know, I used all of yours proposals when I was doing this job, not this new one. But I think that's where the issue is going to come, is when we have to convert one of them to the other. Can this proposal be turned in either euro and dollar, depending on how they want to be paid? Or can it only be turned in?
The tasks are determined what the currency is, like the base contract. It'll be a dollars, more than likely, contract.
Right, but if they want to be paid in euros,
And that'll get converted based on the rate that is in effect for the times that contract was signed.
But your proposal is still in dollars.
Yes. Because we are always comparing it to CCL.
Yeah.
So we will always back it out in the dollars.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't make any sense to convert to CCL every time, everybody's so yeah, so we are always gonna run statutory percentages in dollars, so that we get, because the same inflation problems that you have. This CCL was built 5 years ago on the 1391, and so converting it back and forth just gets messy. We always go back to dollars to make it clean.
so here's my question to that, to you guys, is, so say they submit in euro, right? Like the prime and all of their subs are want to be paid in euro. Then we will convert that to dollars to do all of our checks. And then we convert that back to euro by the fluctuation percentage that we're given by the government, and because it seems like that could change their rates from whatever they have agreed upon in euro would now be a different rate once it gets changed twice. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So they have approved rates in euros and they have approved rates in dollars. And then that contract year will have a conversion rate. Okay, so it shouldn't go back and forth, but be on different rates. It's not what Y sends out every morning. You know, it's not like 86.6.
Yeah,
That's right now.
But
It's
we
whatever the
sometimes
contract.
we sometimes gain some money.
Yeah.
To exchange rate, and sometimes we lose. So
Would you mind if we table this issue so we can get back to some more discussion and make sure we save time for that open Q&A session? I'll table this, make sure we follow up with you all.
Yeah, so going back down, the tabs that were already in the spreadsheet, the cost summary tab that was here, that was one of the ones where I mentioned that adding so multiple tents, we already mentioned that. The profit was the item that I mentioned where you may want to have 2 separate profit rates, one for one for lower tier subs, one for straight up labor. And then also having, just the way, you know, normally we don't, charge profit on travel.
Mhm.
So the way you know, we need to kind of adjust the spreadsheet on that, because right now profit rolled up across everything. Or need to put the formula in there where it ignores the travel line.
So just for clarification, use aids, lump sum. Lump sum.
Yeah.
So it would be a different,
Yeah.
they have their own profit rate.
Well, they're gonna charge us profit already, whereas if I had a sub that was, with a negotiated rate, I'm assuming they're gonna have the same profit rate that we would charge on that, and kind of more of a team member. If they're a service providing sub like Topo, they're gonna give us a fixed fee bid that's gonna include a number of percentage of profit. We don't want to charge profit on profit, but we obviously want to charge profit on the sub because we take the risk to manage the sub.
Right.
So
Say
having,
their contract's $1,000, 100, that's profit.
Yeah.
Take out the $100, you apply your profit to the $900 cost, part of the contract. And then, but the $100 goes back into the total at the end.
and the reason I suggest having a second one is if it's a small number, normally it'll be the same profit we charge, just because again, it takes a certain amount of effort to manage a small contract versus a big one. If it is a big subcontract, then potentially I wouldn't charge 10% on top of a number that already has 10% potentially for the sub to charge.
Mhm.
Maybe the sub would charge 8 and maybe I'd charge 4 or something like that, as an example. Just if you have that second profit number, it would give us the option, as the case requires, to go, yeah, we think this is the profit we should earn on this particular scope for this sub.
Yeah, I mean, I think the only issue with that is now we have 2 profit rates in the contract.
Yeah.
And
I'm happy.
I'd like how you say that, don't charge less, but some of them do make it. This is 10 on the contract, 12 on our side. So we'll throw that around and see, because it's another feature that we have to negotiate.
Yeah.
So,
All right.
yeah, we'll talk about that.
I need to have taken it in the back.
It's just clear and transparent. Yeah, so next tab is the narrative. Again, I just suggested here, color code the fields that get edited again, just to try to be the same for if it's a AE entered area. Already talked about this, potentially having a second profit. Don't need to talk about that anymore. So the labor spreadsheet is the one that currently we have. I suggested adding a column to the far right, which gives you a horizontal total by hours and by role. So this is kind of the lead into that other summary tab. But when we go down to actually looking at how many hours do I have by role, having that sum total across the really wide spreadsheet in one column would be helpful.
Mhm.
So easy addition. I talked about the idea of having macros. Realize that macros may be not the right answer for that.
I guess I can say, working with macros.
Yeah.
Those can get corrupted so easily that.
Yeah.
And I think there's an issue with using them on certain systems, our systems, and emailing that stuff, so.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think, we can take that off the table where you currently have buttons across the top to kind of contract and expand things. So you have buttons like this on the side that will suck things up. It did seem like they're off by a row because there's still a data row in there. So they just need to be adjusted a bit so that they don't have a data row. And I think the same thing happens if I do at the top. They just need to have the ranges buttons set differently. And again, maybe the answer for the AE community is once you winnow it down to be the firms that are contributing, go through and hide any of the unused rows. So the idea that you have, potentially hundreds of rows, hiding the ones that you don't have labor in would be a good thing, just to make it a more useful thing for the government to evaluate, for us as AEs to be able to see this is exactly who's expecting to have hours on the dot.
Hey, Chandler, we had about 5-ish minutes left. Went out and talked, so we can stay until 1 o'clock. Could you try and wrap up in 5 minutes? And I've got one more question. We'll do our closing remarks.
So the other kind of main suggestion I had here, if you look at the orange tabs at the bottom, ODC and DBA backup, travel backup, and then that summary metric, those are basically tabs that I was suggesting to add. Things like the DBA, travel backup is one of those things where I copied in an example where we typically include, screenshots and quotes and stuff like that because government wants to see it. If you have that as a separate tab, it kind of gives you a consolidated place to do it. I'm also a fan of having kind of a summary travel table that shows the number of people, how you plan for, 2 travel days, 3 days on site, 1 trip. These are the people that are traveling. Having a table like that, I think, is the clearest way to show who's actually going to show up on the site, because that's always a key point in negotiations. And if you have this on kind of that travel tab, then you just reference the costs in on to the travel calculating tab. For ODCs and DBA, kind of the same thing. We have we run a calculation. If you actually looked at my travel backup, I actually run the calculation over here where I calculate the labor based on the rate. And then actually I pull that, I use that travel because normally it's the travel is when we're going to pay DBA anyway. So I calculate the rate on that backup and then use that to calculate the total DBA. And then finally, I didn't, I have an example where we've done this, but this may be something where different AEs might want to see something different. So it could be that, hey, we kind of make a suggestion. This may be something for the rest of the AE community to, if you were going to have a summary sheet of something that would be useful for us, again, I use it to put stuff in my pricing tool. I use it to evaluate and discuss with my AE partners, how we split the work. Showing a sample of this may be something that different AEs can put one forward and we can pick the one that's the best or.
But each AE has the ability to make their own tab and then link the information they want into a summary tab, right?
Yeah, multiple worksheets can be added to the spreadsheet.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think if there's something like specific that you needed for the way that you guys, do your proposals and what you need to be able to show your JV partners and you just would develop your own.
Right.
Customizing.
And I guess that may be one where if we had here's the SJBH template that has all of the rates built in, we could have our tab at the back and you grab that as the starting point when you build the WBS. That way it already has the logic and stuff built in. And makes it easier so we don't have to recreate that every time.
Okay.
So that would be helpful.
And then just to note, we are going to this just for numbers. There should be merit for it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
I think we might be repeating some information where it's not going to be this.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. The written narrative, again, not looking to get rid of that.
Yeah.
But
That'd be like where we capture all the assumptions, where we're going to ask you to redline certain assumptions or add other assumptions in after scoping but I think I don't want to kind of muddy this with lots of text.
yeah, this wouldn't be text in the back. This is basically just all pulling the subtotals forward. And then normally.
Can you just send us like what you're
sure. And a sample of how you would basically do checksums to make sure the math gets carried forward to your.
And that's really important in firms because what we do is, of course, that spreadsheet gets loaded into our accounting system so we can track it. We need those summaries, and not every firm uses the same accounting tool. So a tab, having that tab there really helps us. Not so much just because we're JV, but just loading the data and thing to do that.
But you're saying for that tab, basically us providing the initial document that has all of your rates in it, you would be able to generate your own tab.
Yeah, and I could give you that back and going, hey, he had already have my stuff at the back. Here's your starting point.
Yeah, we'll talk about that internally, and then likely if we decided to do that, we would just send you the spreadsheet and have you put your own things in there.
Yeah. And
But we'll talk about, because they use this every day, so I want to make sure that we talk through the pros and cons of doing that, you know, because it then makes it a much larger,
yeah,
and we're trying to simplify it,
Yeah.
but use kind of the best aspects that we found of each of your proposals that you were using before.
And I'm having a hard time envisioning some of the things, so
Yeah.
send us some
Yeah,
examples
absolutely.
that,
Yeah.
you know, ideas you would want incorporated, then we'll take that, you know, search.
Good to go?
Yeah.
All right, folks, we are right at that time. We did have one additional question. Adam, were there any other questions from the AE for the online participant? Okay. Would you ask your question?
Yes, we have negotiated markups on subcontractors, which I cannot add in the spreadsheet, as far as I know. At least in the version I have. And there, we have negotiated GNA on ODCs,
Mhm.
and I cannot add these either. So at least in my version, I
Sure.
have, which is associated with one new task order, which we received 2 weeks ago, 1 week.
Okay. Yeah, let us talk about that and see how we can, because there are different rates that people have that are unique to that company. So we need to figure out a way that you can apply those rates in our template, depending on what rates you have negotiated. So we'll have to talk about that until we see it.
Right.
But yes, it's an issue that we know we have.
How would you recommend we do our proposal now? Because this doesn't include it, and we have received the spreadsheet for that task order.
So I guess we're brainstorming, do a summary sheet and have it applied on there somehow.
Okay.
To show it.
Who's your APM?
Yeah, who's negotiating the contract on behalf of the government?
I don't know yet.
Okay.
We're waiting on a new scope, and
Okay.
then we have no submittal there yet.
Figure it out.
Yeah, we'll get back to you on it.
Okay.
We'll talk through it. And what contract is that? What project?
It's for the warehouses in Mannheim, Coleman Barracks.
Okay.
Okay, well, let's wrap it up here. I'm going to go over a couple of due-outs that I heard. So if anybody has any additional due-outs that I missed, please let me know. Pretty short list from the AE community is, Chandler, you're going to get some feedback about some additional features that you'd like the Corps to consider. Along that same note, the Corps of Engineers is going to have some internal discussion about sending out a template to the AEC community. Kind of ties back into that same discussion. Jason, I'll follow up with you on that exchange rate discussion, and we'll publish some of those. I'll coordinate with you on how to get that info out to the AEC community. And then Guido's question about figuring out how to resolve the differences in rates. Again, that would be an internal discussion from USACE to follow up with the AEC community. Anything else that I missed that you'd like to see as due-outs or takeaways from this meeting?
Yes, as we go through some iterations of this, because there's already been a few different versions. Once you get to something that makes you, relatively happy and everybody's kind of like smiles about it, can we get that out just as like, hey, this is what expect to be used in the future ahead of, oh yeah, by the way, you will propose that and here's the template you're using. So we kind of get some feedback time for it in case we do have questions on how to insert particular things.
Yeah, I'll have to get all of the email addresses that contracting uses when they send out like updates to our SS 330 policy and stuff. Make sure that everyone gets it and not just our, the Elite 8, we call it the Elite 8 contracts or which I think is mainly who we sent this one out to, because that's the majority of the business. But yeah, I think we can do a better job of getting it out there before we get an RFP with an updated version.
Awesome.
You should be also receiving the most updated version that we found.
Okay, and there was one more comment from the online folks, and they requested, someone on the online community requested that the core send out the template. So I guess I just asked core to double check that distro list, Kurt, for whomever you sent that out to again. And I don't know, and we can talk about that a little bit more if you need to, but someone asked for that on the online. Okay, let me do one more round of any parting shots. That's my perfect. Anything from online, Adam? No. Okay, then I have just a couple of quick admin things for the Corps of Engineers folks. Would you mind coming up here for a quick moment? I'd like to present a coin and say thank you. And the reason I want to say thanks to the Corps is I want everybody here online and in person to recognize that the Corps of Engineers is going out of their way to be a good collaborator and a good partner in developing national security objectives. So thank you for being a partner and facilitating SAMB in participating in that collaboration and together making products that meet y'all's needs and the ABC communities. Again, and then a specific thanks to Kurt, who is like, that is just a ton of work that went into that, a lot of heart and soul. And I want you to know that in the community, as I've talked to folks and do organize this, we recognize that. We recognize that this is a very valuable product because it helps us all be fair and equitable, which is what delivers best national security objectives. So I just want to say thank you, teammates. Thank you very much. All right, that is all that I have for this.
Well, I guess you've seen, over the last couple of months, we're getting more engaged with the SAME community as a district. I think we have been engaged, but maybe it was a once a year thing in January, where now we're trying to at least attend events, if not help in roundtable discussions or workshops. That's now like my job. You know, we're structured differently than we ever have been. We have more people in places to be able to do this type of thing. So when you have ideas, then you go through the SAME leadership. But we are trying to be more engaged with the AA community and partnering and working through these kind of issues and things that we run into. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate y'all's time.
Yeah.
Thanks. Good to be here. Kurt, thank you. Good job. All right, teammates.
Thank you, Madam.
You bet.